Welcome to The Debate. Today we're dissecting Sombra's 2026 track, Homewrecker, and I'll be arguing that it is a masterpiece of psychological vulnerability and true artistic evolution.
And I will be stripping away that romanticism to prove it is nothing more than a meticulously engineered commercial pop product designed purely for playlist placement.
Right, so let's just get right into the core of it. Repeating the word better 30 times in a 3-minute span?
It's a lot.
It is, but it isn't some algorithmic glitch, and it certainly isn't just a lazy, repetitive hook. If you actually listen to the song, specifically focusing on that deeply claustrophobic imagery of the conversation on the fire escape, you aren't just hearing a pop song.
Well, you're hearing a product, but go on.
No, you are witnessing a desperate, agonizing psychological collapse. A fire escape is the ultimate liminal space, right? Sure, architecturally speaking.
Exactly. It's suspended on the outside of a building. It's attached to a home, but perpetually locked out of it. It is a brilliant physical manifestation of the narrator's moral ambiguity. He is literally hanging on the edge of someone else's relationship.
I applaud your commitment to this deeply romantic narrative. I really do. It's a beautiful sentiment.
Because it's true. When he repeats that he could be better for this person, he isn't bragging, he isn't claiming superiority. It's a frantic, devastating attempt at self-justification. He's trying to convince himself that stepping into a love triangle is somehow ethically permissible.
But framing a perfectly calibrated, 100 beat per minute indie pop product as an agonizing psychological collapse is just a fascinating way to describe standard major label sanitization.
Sanitization? How is exploring human guilt sanitization? Because you can analyze the poetry of fire escapes and liminal spaces all you want, but the reality of that repetitive hook is entirely grounded in commercial mechanics. The repetition of the word better isn't a profound display of moral ambiguity. It is an earworm.
It's the sound of someone spiraling.
It is a highly calculated, meticulously engineered phrase designed by Warner Records and SMB Music LLC for maximum TikTok replayability.
Okay, that's just incredibly cynical.
It's the reality of the business. If you look at the trajectory of Shane Boose's career, this song explicitly strips away the raw, visceral vulnerability of his earlier work just to guarantee a Billboard Hot 100 placement, which naturally peaked safely at number 19.
You are looking at a brilliant marketing strategy and calling it a confession. You're treating evolution like a betrayal, as if stepping out of a bedroom studio inherently invalidates an artist's soul.
It doesn't invalidate a soul, but it certainly polishes it for the radio.
But the transition from the deeply raw, unpolished beltings to debut album, I Barely Know Her, to the sophisticated landscape of Homewrecker is not a sanitization of his artistry. It is a deliberate, highly elevated contrast.
Elevated is certainly one word for it.
When you bring in a heavyweight co-producer like Tony Berg and you hand the mix over to Shawn Everett, you aren't selling out. You are expanding your canvas. The glossy, bright mainstream pop sound of this track acts as a pristine cinematic mask.
Yes. Expanding the canvas. That is a spectacularly generous way to describe sacrificing dynamic range for playlist placement.
It creates a necessary, agonizing structural tension. The music sounds like the intoxicating high BPM rush of a forbidden affair, while the lyrics anchor you to the bitter reality.
Let's look at the actual mechanics of this so-called evolution. In his early breakout hits, tracks like Back to Friends or Undressed, you had real, unpolished vocal delivery.
Right, he was younger, more raw.
You had harsh frequency spikes. You had the actual friction of human imperfection. Handing the mix to Shawn Everett isn't about creating a cinematic mask. It is acoustic Botox.
Acoustic Botox? That's ridiculous.
It's exactly what it is. Everett's specific job, mandated by the mechanics of modern major labels, was to use multiband compression to hunt down every single unpredictable dynamic spike and paralyze it.
He was just creating a professional, balanced mix.
He sanded down every audio edge so the track could play seamlessly in the background of a coffee shop without ever startling a casual listener. Releasing this safe, polished track on February 5th, 2026 was a textbook strategic pivot.
A pivot to a wider audience, yes, which lets him share that emotional complexity with more people.
It was engineered to transition him from a niche indie darling into a mainstream cash cow. And given his 57.7 million monthly Spotify listeners and that #4 peak in the UK, well, the corporate machinery worked flawlessly.
But the machinery you are so quick to dismiss is exactly what orchestrates the emotion of the track, adding layers of guitars from Mason Stoops and Rocket Richett,
Expensive session players.
elite musicians, and incorporating Benny Bach on keyboards, utilizing session royalty like Kane Richett on drums and Wendy Melwin on bass. None of that dilutes the indie spirit.
It just makes it sound incredibly expensive.
It orchestrates a psychological state. A love triangle isn't sparse. It isn't a single sad acoustic guitar in an empty bedroom. It is dense, it is chaotic, and it is overwhelmingly loud in your own head.
I do love the mental gymnastics required to view hiring a small army of expensive session musicians as anything other than a safety net for label executives.
It's a sonic representation of a messy romance spiraling out of control. Even the rhythm section, if you listen closely, they don't sit perfectly, rigidly on a pop grid. There is a subtle, almost imperceptible drag that mimics an anxious heartbeat.
Let me explain what that chaotic, anxious heartbeat actually looks like on the sheet music. They took a D-flat major key and wrapped it in the most incredibly safe, predictable harmonic loop in modern commercial music.
The I-E-V-I-V progression?
Exactly. D-flat major, E-flat minor 7, B-flat minor 7, and a G-flat add 9. Do you know why they use that exact progression?
Because it serves the cyclical nature of the lyrics?
No, because it mathematically tricks the human brain. It resolves just enough to keep the listener perfectly comfortable, but it specifically avoids using a dominant chord, which denies the ear complete harmonic closure.
Which supports my point about lack of closure.
It leaves this microscopic sense of tension that practically forces your finger to hit the replay button. And throwing an add 9 onto the G-flat is the oldest trick in the producer's handbook.
It adds texture.
It makes a standard pop chord sound slightly wistful and indie without introducing any actual challenging dissonance. They took a highly conventional pop skeleton, dressed it in alt-rock textures to maintain his credibility, and shipped it to mainstream radio. It is an assembly line product wearing a leather jacket.
You can reduce the harmonic structure to a mathematical formula all day long, but you cannot reduce the lyrical psychology to a mere equation.
I think you'd be surprised.
That cyclical, unresolved chord progression you just broke down, it serves a brilliant narrative purpose. The chords loop endlessly because the narrator is trapped in an endless loop of his own guilt.
Or because it's just very catchy.
Look at the lyrics. They actively resist the commercial safety you're describing. In the bridge, the narrator explicitly refuses to be a foundational test for the other person's world.
Sure, typical indie angst.
And then, in the final chorus, he simply surrenders to the affair without any moral resolution whatsoever. He doesn't apologize, he doesn't learn a lesson, he doesn't walk away.
Which is very convenient for a pop song.
He just leaves the listener sitting in the profound discomfort of an unresolved ethical breach. That lack of closure is a daring, fundamentally anti-pop artistic choice.
That is a compelling observation about the narrative structure, I'll admit. But have you considered that this supposed moral ambiguity is precisely what makes the song so universally marketable?
How is an unresolved ethical breach marketable?
Let's cut through the poetry and look at the container this narrative is placed in. The song is exactly 3 minutes and 29 seconds long.
A standard song length.
That specific runtime is not an artistic statement on unresolved ethics. It is an algorithmic skeleton key. Spotify's Discover Weekly recommendation engine relies heavily on a metric called the completion rate.
Right, if they finish the song, it gets recommended more.
Exactly. If a song is a sprawling 5-minute emotional epic, the statistical probability of a listener skipping before the end skyrockets, which tanks the track's algorithmic score.
So he wrote a concise song. That's not a crime.
At exactly 3.5 minutes, played at a brisk 100 beats per minute, you mathematically minimize the risk of user fatigue while maximizing the sheer number of times the track can be streamed in a single hour.
That's just a byproduct of good editing.
Furthermore, the narrative, "I'm better than your current partner," is one of the safest, most widely digestible tropes in the history of pop music. It flatters the listener. It flirts with being edgy without ever crossing the line into genuine unlikability.
It is incredibly unlikable to be a homewrecker.
But it avoids the risk of alienating the casual audience. They sanded down the edges of the lyrics the exact same way Shawn Everett sanded down the mix.
You're suggesting that structural precision inherently destroys authenticity, and I just fundamentally disagree with that. A piece of art can be structurally optimized and still challenge its audience.
I'm still waiting for the challenge.
If you want proof that the homewrecker concept is deeply substantive, look at how the narrative was expanded visually. The music video, directed by Gus Black, elevates the entire premise into an incredible piece of meta-art.
Oh, the movie within a movie conflict.
Yes. It isn't just a singer performing on a soundstage. It features Quinlan Blackwell and Milo Manheim. And Manheim isn't just playing the role of the rival lover, he is playing a temperamental, manipulative director who is actively controlling the scene we are watching.
Which is a very clever visual package, I will grant you that.
It shatters the fourth wall. It culminates in this high-noon Western showdown, which isn't just a quirky aesthetic choice. It is a direct interrogation of the audience. We always demand a clear villain in a breakup.
Right, a bad guy in a black hat.
Exactly. By turning the emotional conflict into a literal shootout orchestrated by a fake director, the video mocks our societal need to simplify complex human grief into cheap, dramatic spectacle. It asks us, who is the actual homewrecker here?
Gus Black is an excellent director. And, utilizing young, highly visible talent like Blackwell and Manheim ensures excellent cross-platform engagement. But a sophisticated music video is still ultimately a promotional vehicle designed to distract from the musical safety of the track itself. It is narrative marketing.
But the narrative marketing, as you call it, bled into reality. Look at the incident at the 2026 Brit Awards.
Oh, please, don't tell me you bought into that.
A man literally invaded the stage during a live broadcast wearing a shirt that called Sombra a homewrecker. When it was later revealed to be a staged event, critics dismissed it as a stunt, but I argue it was a brilliant piece of sociological performance art.
I have to stop you there because we urgently need to deliver a crushing reality check to that theory.
It took the internal, quiet guilt of the song and forcefully projected it onto a global stage. It forced society to confront its own rabid obsession with the performance of blame.
The 2026 Brit Awards stage invasion was not sociological performance art. It was a manufactured PR stunt executed by a boardroom of executives to manipulate an algorithm.
It was a fascinating commentary on public outrage.
The systems that control YouTube and social media feeds do not evaluate the philosophical merit of a video. They measure the velocity of search queries. When you hire an actor to invade a stage on international television, you aren't challenging society. You are generating a localized, massive spike in Google searches.
But the message...
Millions of people suddenly typed Brit Awards stage invasion into their phones at the exact same moment. The algorithm detects that sudden velocity, assumes the associated music video is a critical cultural event, and forcefully injects it into the recommendation feeds of users who have never even heard of Shane Boos.
It's still art.
That is exactly how you artificially inflate a video to 11 million views. The entire concept, the title, the Western shootout, the staged public outrage is nothing more than a product rollout. It was perfectly executed by SMB Music LLC to create the illusion of depth in order to sell records.
I understand your skepticism. I really do. The mechanics of major label promotion are incredibly loud, and the algorithm manipulation is undeniable.
Glad we can agree on the reality of the situation.
But just because the marketing is loud doesn't invalidate the quiet truth at the center of the music. You just can't fake human resonance.
You can certainly engineer it, though.
Even if he isn't belting at the top of his lungs like he used to, there is a distinct, frayed edge to his vocal delivery on this track. It is a half-spoken, half-sung performance that communicates a deep underlying instability.
Instability that happens to sit perfectly on a 100 BPM grid.
And if you want absolute proof that this isn't just a sterile studio fabrication, you have to look at the live performances. When you hear him perform Homewrecker with a live band at Coachella in 2026, there is no Shawn Everett mix to hide behind.
No, just a massive festival sound system.
There is no Gus Black music video playing in the background to distract you. It is just a human being on a stage. You hear the guilt in his voice. You hear the genuine, agonizing reality of a person wrestling with their own destructive impulses. Beneath all the Warner Records machinery, you can literally hear a real artist bleeding out his confession in real time.
I find it remarkably fitting that you bring up Coachella, honestly, because it perfectly illustrates the final, most lucrative stage of the corporate life cycle. Yes, he is bleeding out on stage, but bleeding out is a highly profitable enterprise when you package the blood in a perfectly polished, mathematically optimized container. That agonizing confession you're hearing did exactly what it was engineered to do from the very beginning. It charted at number 19 on the Billboard Hot 100. It hit number 2 on the Hot Rock on Alternative Songs chart. It successfully wrecked his old indie ceiling, activated the mainstream pop algorithm, and bought him a mansion. The calculation was absolutely flawless.